Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I learn a little bit more about somebody else's perspective on movies. And I have a very special guest, a filmmaker, John LaDue, who's here to talk about his film Children of Yamato. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And John, if you'd like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your film.
Greetings from Tokyo, Japan. It is a beautiful fall morning here. I am John LaDue. I grew up in Tokyo. My parents met in university in Hawaii, and so I was born in Hawaii on Pearl Harbor Day, exactly 40 years after the Pearl Harbor attack. And then my parents moved to Tokyo when I was a baby. So pretty much spent my whole life here. I started to go into film, and so I studied at university in Los Angeles for 4 years, worked a little bit in Hollywood, and then moved back to Japan in 2006. And now I'm a journalist at Japan's in Japan's TV broadcasting industry, and I make documentaries as a hobby almost. I have my own company with Kintsugi Pictures that I set up to make document news documentaries for Japan's TV networks, but I wanted to make my own films, and so a lot of guys my age, usually, they play golf or whatever. I
Mhm.
I make movies. That's my hobby. So
There you go. It's a pretty cool hobby for sure, and obviously you have a very unique perspective on things. And you have your new film, Children of Yamato. If you want to tell the audience a little bit about what the film is.
Children of Yamato is actually my soul journey. So I grew up in Tokyo, like I said. Obviously, I don't look Japanese at all.
Mhm.
So I struggled with my identity for a long time because I don't look Japanese, but also I don't really fit in America so much because I tell people that my heart is Japanese. I tell
Mhm.
people I'm a Chevy with Toyota parts.
There you go.
So this movie is kind of like my journey of trying to figure out, um, how I fit into the world of Japan, but also I have, Japanese American mixed, two mixed children, and so for them too, I wanted to discover what it truly means to be Japanese. Yamato is another word for the people of Japan. So children of Yamato literally means the children of Japan. So I wanted to explore for the sake of my kids what it truly means to be Japanese in this modern age,
Mhm.
given the re-education policies of General MacArthur after World War II, where he re-educated the Japanese people. Um, and I argue that he cut off their spiritual roots, their spiritual heritage, in order to make Japan a sort of a American mini-me so
Mhm.
that Japan could be useful to the U.S. And indeed, Japan is quite useful economically and otherwise to Japan. So yeah, so this movie explores uh, the education policies of MacArthur after World War II and the devastating effects that it had on the Japanese psyche. I pushed back a little bit on the official narrative that um, the U.S. were the good guys and Japan were the bad guys. Any student of history will know that history is complicated and therefore sometimes it's not as clear cut that Japan was the Nazis of the East and the U.S. were the heroes and saved the day. That's the official narrative, but this movie is a bit of a pushback on that. But then I get into the history of Japan and the history
Mhm.
of Yamato and who are the Japanese people. And that takes me on a journey to all over Japan. I go all over Japan talking to priests and local people and young people about what it truly means to be Japanese. And I discover a lot of things that most people would not associate with Japan in their ancient history. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like an exploration of what it means to be Japanese for the sake of me, for the sake of my kids, and like kind of like where do we go from here? It's been 80 years since World War II. The official narrative has gone on, and people in Japan believe it, but there's a reawakening in Japan to kind of reclaim their heritage.
Mhm.
And so I really tapped into that psyche right now. There's a movement in Japan to kind of reclaim what it means to be the children of Yamato. And so my film came out exactly at the right time.
Awesome. And obviously, this is a very personal journey for you, and also tackles a pretty big and impactful topic in terms of Japanese people. What do you feel like for you has been the most impactful element of this journey making this film for you personally?
When I started making this film in 2019, it took me 6 years to finish it,
Hmm.
partly because of COVID and just lockdowns and everything.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of time to really have all these topics and interviews kind of um, soak in my psyche.
Hmm.
When I first started, it was a very different film. I wanted to explore why the Japanese military, did such horrible atrocities, even though the Japanese today are so kind and loved by all, everybody in the world. And everyone's just like, wow, like how was Japan so evil when they're such lovely people? But so I wanted to explore that because that just didn't fit into how I see the Japanese people. But in my exploration of history, I realized that we weren't told the complete truth in our history of World War II. And so I very much um, evolved in my thinking to realize that history is much more complicated than we all thought. And for the sake of my kids too, because my kids are Japanese, and so they grew up
Hmm.
being told that Japan was the Nazis of the East and all these atrocities during World War II, and they were the evil ones of and that should never happen again. And in order for that to never happen again, just become a version of America. Democracy has to be one in the psyche of the people. You don't just impose democracy, and that's what exactly what America did is they imposed democracy, but in a American fashion. It's American form of democracy, and so I think that's where uh, a lot of Japanese people kind of just feel lost in their identity and who they are and how they fit into the world after trying, being 80 years of trying to become, what the Americans
Hmm.
wanted to become. So I evolved in my thinking as I started exploring. So when I started this film in 2019, I had a totally different vision of where I was headed, and as I talked to people, uh, this journey took me to what the conclusions that I have in my film, which are you know maybe we can take another look at what really happened in World War II.
Awesome. And obviously, this is the type of film that it's gonna read and you know give perspective in different ways to different audiences who are watching it. And obviously, two big perspectives of like Japanese people watching this film and you have Americans watching this film. What do you feel like are the biggest takeaways that you're hoping that, say, Japanese people get out of watching this film versus what you hope, Americans get out of watching this film?
For the Japanese audience, this movie is primarily for the people of Japan to kind of remind them how special their heritage, their history, their culture, uh, how amazing their culture is. The whole world is just baffled by when
Hmm.
they come to Japan. The whole world is coming to Japan now, and back in the '80s when I grew up here, there weren't a lot of foreigners, but now like everyone is coming to Japan, and it's like one of the everyone has a bucket list of somehow going to Japan. And when they come here, it doesn't disappoint. They're like, wow, this is like this civilization is on a whole nother level. They've actually my friends from university who've come here, they said that it's like Japan's just on a whole nother civilizational level,
Mhm.
something that I've never seen before, and it's really true. Um, and so I want Japanese people to be like, you know what? Yeah, we do have something special here, and that should be protected. And yeah, like the U.S. told us that we are the Nazis of the East. Koreans and Chinese constantly remind Japanese people that they were the Nazis of the East. Um, but even if you know everything that the U.S. and the Chinese and the Koreans say are true, uh, this like short period of time during World War II should not define who the Japanese people are. They have thousands of years of history. And why should this one event in World War II define who they are? I and so it's kind of like my purpose for the Japanese audience is to kind of instill a kind of patriotism, pride. Being
Mhm.
patriotic in Japan is taboo. You're not allowed to be patriotic. It's weird to fly the Japanese flag in your home. And that shouldn't be like, why shouldn't Japanese people be patriotic? They have an amazing country, they have an amazing history.
Mhm.
And a decade or so during World War II, regardless of whether it's true or not, which I say that is not as clear cut as we've all thought, that shouldn't define who the Japanese people are. And so I wanted to encourage them. And a lot of Japanese people they just can't stop crying because they're like, oh my goodness, not only did I always feel shame for being Japanese, but like you as an American kind of came in and kind of like encouraged us to be like, hey guys, you guys are amazing people, especially young people. I could keep telling Japanese people, young people, in the movie at the very end at the shrine, I told them, "Nihonjin wa kakkoi dayo." That means, do you realize how cool you are as Japanese people? Japanese people are cool, you know? And so that's the message to the Japanese people. For the American audience, I think we can also get a lot out of it. Is just, um, yes, we keep claiming that we are the most amazing nation on earth. We're number one. We're amazing. And yeah, we've done a lot of amazing things in history, and democracy is a great form of government. Capitalism maybe too, but um, yeah, I mean, I think it's a healthy dose of yeah, maybe humility, maybe
Mhm.
like bring the hubris down a bit, Humility is attractive. Pride is not. You could be patriotic without being full of hubris. I thought, Americans have done such incredible things, but like, let's be sober a little bit. Let's bring down the hubris a little bit and be like, yeah, but we did make mistakes. Otherwise, if we don't learn from our mistakes, and we're just going to repeat them again, and that's what history is for. And if we say, Churchill once said, history is written by the victors. We were the victors in many, many wars, and therefore rewrote a lot of the history. And so, maybe revisit that history, but also I thought, Americans would benefit from the American audience would benefit from learning about all these different facets of who the Japanese people are, how deep their culture is, and um, it's a fascinating. They're fascinating people, and I think Americans watch my film might get some insight into like just how deep and how unique and how multifaceted the Japanese identity is.
Absolutely. And I think it's very interesting, especially coming from like a perspective, like I grew up, lived my whole entire life in New Jersey. And it's very interesting seeing the pockets of American society that have a great appreciation for Japanese culture, Japanese art in particular. And obviously, like I spend a lot of time watching film, and I appreciate a lot of Japanese cinema. And whether it's, Kurosawa and a lot of those samurai films and stuff like that, or I'm a huge anime fan. And really feeling that very different, unique kind of perspective in terms of artistic expression, and getting to see this film and seeing those different facets of Japanese culture and how things have shaped that and have morphed that over the past. decade since World War II. It was a very interesting experience going through this. Coming from my perspective, being an American and seeing this other culture, and obviously you have a very unique perspective coming from, being somebody who your whole life you are Japanese, like you've lived there your whole entire life, but coming from parents who weren't from Japan and coming from that perspective and feeling that divide. And I feel like you can see that balancing those aspects through your expression of this film. And I always like to wrap up my conversations with filmmakers when it comes to their films by like, obviously, you want people to go check out your film. What's the one reason why people should check out Children of Yamato?
I think, um, yeah, it's an exploration of who we are as a civilization. I don't know. I think my next film that I'm making as well is a similar theme, but
Mhm,
we're a lot more connected in history than we actually realized. In my film,
mhm,
I go into how Middle Eastern merchants, went along the Silk Road and made it to Japan and settled in Japan. I don't think we realize as a civilization how much we there was sojourning throughout the world,
mhm,
and actually a lot of elements and a lot of cultures um, made it. So like in Japan, in the Japanese oldest historical manuscripts, the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, it's actually what a lot of scholars they say it's a melting pot of different mythologies throughout the world. There's elements of Greek mythology, there's elements of Egyptian, Mesopotamian mythology, there's elements of the Bible in there. It's kind of a and the oldest Japanese manuscript, historical manuscript, Kojiki is was compiled in the 7th century and or 8th century actually, and so it was kind of like everything. Until then, it was all just oral tradition, right? So
mhm,
all these oral traditions from around Japan kind of got uh, put into this one historical manuscript, and you realize how do they have, Egyptian or Greek mythology within Japan? And actually, we're a lot more nomadic and mobile
mhm,
than the history that we've been told. And so, I think one thing that you could take away is um, kind of do your own journey in exploration into history that we've been told. Not everything that we've been told in history books is necessarily 100% accurate. And so speak with scholars and read books with different perspectives
mhm,
about history, because you might find nuggets of really, really interesting things that maybe, you know, you never discovered before, especially uh, like history, ancient history that maybe in the West we were very insistent that all
mhm,
historical documents must be written down and documented, and only the things that are written down are have merit. But the first peoples, my next movie is actually about the first peoples throughout the world. I believe the Japanese are also the first peoples. The first peoples, it was always oral tradition, it
mhm,
was oral tradition, and those traditions and that history is just as legitimate as written down history, in my opinion. And so we can learn a lot from um, these these historical these traditions and legends and oral history that was passed down as well. So yeah, history is endlessly fascinating, and so
mhm.
do your own research do your own exploration into an element of history that interests you, and you might find some really surprising twists and turns, and become your own Indiana Jones. Maybe that's my message: is become your own Indiana Jones. I became an
There you
Indiana
go.
Jones in search of the lost Ark of the Covenant hidden in a Japanese mountain in Shikoku. That's the twist of the film where it goes is I became like, and history is fascinating. We've made it
Mm,
so boring in schools, and you just learn facts and dates and people's names, and we've made history so boring, but history is endlessly fascinating. So yeah, become your own Indiana Jones and explore an element of history that interests you. And for me, it was ancient Japanese history. So
awesome. And obviously, this film's going to give you a very interesting exploration of that. And it sounds like you have a interesting companion piece to that coming up as well. But John, thank you so much for your time to talk with me today. Where can people check out your film?
it is on Amazon Prime at the moment in the US, North America, around the world. Uh, Coming out on other streamers as well. There's quite a few other smaller streamers, but for right now, it's definitely on Amazon Prime. So yeah, check it out on Amazon Prime.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for your time and thank you for chatting about your film with me.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And all of you out there, make sure to go check out Children of Yamato. And thank you, as always, for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.